Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the E2KG Network's Game of the Year podcast. So now we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. We're not necessarily going to go down in a traditional Game of the Year, best graphics, best gameplay, best RPG, best console platform, however, whatever other sites you may be reading. So here at the E2KG Network, we've put our own personal spin on it, as we do with most things. So we've got a number of categories that we'll talk about, and we've all had a chance to kind of reflect on our experiences this year, and we'll share them with you. And I think that should generate some good discussion, both here on the podcast and also in the chat as we move forward. So it is a full crew joining me tonight, and we may even have a special guest. No, it's not Santa, but we may get a special guest later in the week. But first off, we do have someone wearing some type of hat. So Prime, what are you wearing? Well, first, Prime needs to remember to turn on his microphone.
I haven't done that in a long time.
Welcome back.
Yeah, it's my Santa hat. White Sox.
Aha. Well, my MLB, the show character is currently one of the starting pitchers for the White Sox, so nice. I can appreciate your fandom there. Agasicles, how are you, sir?
Good.
Excellent. And rounding us out in a very picturesque backdrop there with the stockings all hung by the chimney with care in hope that Link will soon be there. How are you, Swiss?
I suppose I'm in the spirit of the season, so to speak.
Spirit of talking about games, the season of reflecting back on our game experiences. So we've got 5 categories. We're going to keep this nice and tight. We're going to move through our 45-minute block like we usually do on a Tuesday night, and then we will come right back and we will have a second block of 45 minutes, which we will also be covering our second half of our awards. So I'm going to talk about our first 5 awards that we'll be covering tonight, and actually give a coverage of all 10. So we're going to be talking about family games. We're going to talk about games to play when we're sick, sleazy business practices, hidden gems, most fun, most likely to be another outlet's game of the year, most widely known pop cultural referenced video game, most disappointing game experience, a game that we regret not playing or trading in this year, and the game that we'll be likely still playing as the clock rolls over into 2018. So those are our 10 categories, gentlemen. We're going to start right off with our first category tonight. So this is the end of the year, and the end of the year usually brings lots of opportunities for time together with families. Sometimes, this is joyful and welcomed, and other times, well, we endure it as best we can. But regardless of our situations and your situations, games, including video games, can be really helpful in bringing the family together. And so it's with this that E2KG honors our first game. And our first series, our first category, is most likely to be a family game night. So, gentlemen, the way we've done this is that you all don't quite know what each of you have picked. But I'm going to start this off with Agasicles, because I am going to continue to practice saying Agasicles. And you, sir, have picked a game that is unique on our discussion tonight. So, what is your family game night?
You caught me off guard. You have the list. I thought you were going to tell us what we had picked. So I don't have my list up.
Oh, you don't have your list? Okay, so welcome to working out the kinks in the first category. So in true award show fashion, we opened up the wrong envelope and we announced, we will try to do this. We'll keep the swear words at a minimum. And we will, so Agasicles' game night show or family game was Splatoon 2. So we've got a lot of Switch games on our list tonight, and that's not a surprise because we've enjoyed the Switch. But why did you choose Splatoon 2 as your game?
So let me first qualify some of my categories of games, because like a lot of us, I wound up picking games that I don't necessarily own, but I had some exposure to. So with Splatoon 2, I played what was the thing called? It was effectively their beta, but it was called the Worldwide Shootout or whatever.
The test fire.
Test fire.
Global test fire, right. So, and I don't have kids who are who are quite at gaming age yet. My oldest one has played a bit of Skylanders with me, with me heavily supervising. So there really isn't a family game night for video games in my house just yet. But I picked the one that I felt like, if my kids were of gaming age, that I felt like they could handle, because they don't have the coordination down for driving games yet. So I didn't pick something like Mario Kart for this category. But I felt like with Splatoon 2, at least they could just run around and shoot paint, and would maybe be oblivious to who was actually winning or not. Because you can just, when kids can just run around and lay paint down and see and see that they're hitting blue and that there's blue paint going on the floor. So.
I actually think that's a really good choice. Now, it is not my choice, but I will say I literally had Splatoon 2 in my list right up until the end, and then I switched it to the other game you referenced, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I actually had it in there for the reasons you had. My older children are a gaming, like, avid gamers. They play by themselves, and they love Splatoon. We've only played Splatoon 2 for some of the betas, but they still break out the original Splatoon on the Wii U. I mean, even this week. And the reason why I went with Mario Kart 8 is just the couch multiplayer option. Now, they do have a lot of fun with Splatoon 2, cheering each other on, and they're cool about taking turns and everything. But I figured I ended up giving the nod to Mario Kart 8 just because everybody can participate.
Yeah, I think that's a great and solid choice there, right? Family game night, you got 4 players that can all play at the same time. I think Splatoon also makes a whole lot of sense because it is a relatively easy entry point. It's a low barrier to entry, but it can also get competitive. My sons played a lot of both those games during this year, but the game that we come back to a lot as a family is also on the Switch now, but is on every other console and on PC as well, and that is the Jackbox Party Pack. So Jackbox Party Pack 4 is out on the Switch. Actually, 2 just came out as well, but 2 is not nearly as strong. 4 is a good one. It was on sale for a while for only $20, but it usually has like 4 games, some trivia, some like Pictionary types of games, a good kind of family games. And then the nice thing about it is that if you guys have played this before, right, you take a device, any device, a tablet or computer, your phone, and that's your controller. So everybody just logs into a website, so you can play some games with up to, we've played it with a room full of 12 people at times as well. So it's become a family game tradition in our household. But Prime, so these are our choices. What's a family game tradition, or what do you think for this year is that family game choice in your household?
Well, I was gonna say Mario Kart, but my wife can't stand that game. She's just not any good at it. So I'm gonna cheat a little here. I'm gonna break it into 2 games. This is one that I play with my son, one that I play with my wife. 2 older games too, and this might change in the future because I actually just bought Monopoly for the Xbox One not too long ago, and we just haven't had a chance to sit down and play it yet. So that might be one for next year. But this year, with my son, I've been playing a lot of Minecraft. It's the game that we can always come back to. Like he'll go off and start playing. He'll play Mario Kart. We'll play Mario Kart with me, and play all these other games. But that's one game that we can always come back to. And he actually came back to me 2-3 weeks ago, and we hadn't played it for probably about a month. And he wanted to play it again, so we've been playing that again a lot. And then for my wife, she requested that we play Dr. Mario, which I believe I had said on one of the shows not too long ago. So I broke out the Wii U again. I had to set it all back up just for that. So I've been playing Dr. Mario with my wife. So we've been having tons of fun. We go back and forth. She does kick my butt. I will admit that in that game for the most part. I get a few wins in here or there, but yeah, those are my 2 choices. I'm gonna cheat this one category.
So, gentlemen, before we move off to the next category, I want to give some time for anybody to defend, rebuke, challenge somebody's choice if somebody has said something that somebody totally disagrees with here. So, because this is family game night, we may not have a lot of challenges, but I want to lay out the ground rules early.
So one of my surprises is I'm surprised nobody picked arms.
So I can give you why I didn't pick arms, but and mainly because it often ends in arguments between the two players, or at least the two family members fighting each other. And the virtual fights sometimes have lended themselves to physical arguments in our household, at least. But so that's just my household. But anybody else play arms over the course of the year that had it on their list?
I actually had it purchased and returned it based on your review on one of the episodes. So I actually never got a chance to play it.
Yeah, no, we definitely we played it, but has not. Arms has gotten a number of updates. They've continued to add characters, so there must be a community out there. They just had like the equivalent of a Splatfest, where they had two different characters battling off against each other that different online players could choose. So Nintendo's continue to support it, but yeah, it has not gotten supported in our household. That's for sure.
Now, another Switch game though that could have made it, and honestly, if we had this discussion a week or two from now, I might have chosen this. But Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Every night the past week, my son and daughter have been playing versus mode.
That's right, because they just released a versus mode.
And so that game had been actually pretty dormant on our Switch for a while. We got the update, and they're into it. They like it. So, maybe I couldn't have pushed it because it's not like that's like a side, feature. But they added that feature, and it's enjoyable for my children. So
sure. No,
I played some with them, and I thought it was pretty solid.
Neat. That's good to hear too. So again, lots of good choices here for as we head into the holidays, and lots of choices on the Switch. Prime, you were talking about playing with your son. Now, I know that your son has been sick this past week. And so this leads us into our second category as games that we are most likely to play as when we're sick. So whether it's catching something from Aunt Edna who hugged us a little too tightly over the holidays, or just the fact that we have kids with plenty of germs of their own, we have our second category of games we want to play when we're sick. So Prime, you just had a sick household. What's a game that you want to play when you're sick? What's your choice here?
Yeah, so my choice is actually, and probably one I'm going to be playing soon because my wife was sick a couple weeks ago. Now my son, so process of elimination, I'm probably going to be hit now or in a couple weeks. But, well, actually, it's a game that I just bought, and it's Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I've played maybe a couple hours so far, and I'm not even off like the first little main kind of town section that you start off in. It's basically a tutorial. So I spent like I said, 2 hours just running around doing side quests and stuff. Like I can move on if I wanted to, but I want to kind of like, this looks like a game where if you grind before you start like the main story missions, it's probably a good idea to just kind of power yourself up. So I was basically just doing that the whole time, and probably the next time I play, I'll just hit the story and keep going. But yeah, this is definitely looks like it's going to be a pretty deep game, pretty time involved. So that's my choice.
Well, given that people's play clocks are in the 80 to 100 hour range, hopefully you're not sick for that long, Prime.
Yeah.
But certainly, having some dedicated time to sink into a meaty JRPG is definitely a good time to do when you're kind of stuck on the couch or not a high level of energy. Prime, that was almost my choice. Not that game specifically, but I was trying to think about, just JRPGs in general often become a good go-to for me when I'm feeling sick because I don't have a whole lot of energy. But grinding can make me feel at least like I've done something productive. And so with that spirit of grinding, my game that I'll play when I'm sick is going to be Destiny 2. That I can continue to grind, whether or not I, dig all the way into the end game. I have it on enough platforms that there's a little bit of grinding that I can do for any type of character, but can jump in, do a few public events, feel like I've accomplished something, not have to pay a whole lot of attention when my head's cloudy and stuffed up, and I can move on. So that's my game that I can play when I'm sick. Agasicles, you almost had Destiny as yours, but you chose a different game, and I want to know why you chose MLB The Show 17 as your game to play when you're sick.
Yeah, so
The curveball there.
So I think it's going to be interesting to talk about what our criteria was for these, because so Xenoblade Chronicles I can get because it's turn-based, right? So one of the things that happens to me when I'm sick is I sometimes fall asleep, right? Because my head is stuffy, I'm low energy. So Xenoblade Chronicles 2 I get. Destiny 2 I don't, because the big thing with that game, and honestly one of the reasons why I didn't pick it on my list is because you can't pause it. So if I have a stomach virus or something and and I have to take off at the drop of a hat, playing a game that doesn't give you a choice, an option.
I can understand that. I think, and this is where I definitely had a game like a Dragon Quest VIII, something that I can flip down the lid on my DS and do whatever needs to be done, let's say. But I think what I was thinking about is if I'm homesick and I've got no energy, but I'm not quite. If I'm really sick, I'm going to try to be in bed and napping, right? But if I just have no energy, but I kind of want to feel like I'm doing something, Destiny for the past 3 years has basically been about doing nothing but feeling like you're doing something. So that's where I came to it. So how about baseball? I last night after this choice, I played baseball. I played MLB based on not that I'm feeling sick, but you're going to stay awake, or the fact that you can hold out a pitch and wait and
right, because if you're not at bat when you're pitching, as far as I know, I've let the game just sit there for a pretty long period of time and there's no penalty. So plus the game can be paused. Plus any individual game can last a pretty long period of time, and you don't have to worry about going through a bunch of transitions. So don't have to worry about falling asleep, staying awake. You can pause the game. There's no penalty, at least when you're not at bat. When you're pitching, there's no penalty to just leaving the game sitting there. So that's kind of, but it's also meaty, right? So it's not. Destiny 2 is a game that I can play for a pretty long time, but eventually that's something that I need to switch to a different game. Whereas in any sports game, I could probably if the individual discrete games in the game are lengthy, I can play them for a longer period of time without getting kind of game fatigue. So
nice. I appreciate that. That's a good choice and a good logic there. So we've kind of laid out our different logics here, Swiss, which leaves it to you, but you actually probably have a game that fits all of those categories, right? Something big and meaty that you can play for a long time, something that you can grind on, but also that you can push pause and take a break when you need to. So what's your game when you're sick?
Mine is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So and as you said in the leading the segue, I agree with all of the above. Kind of lets you settle in, because like you've been talking when you're groggy or tired. I don't want to be in an overly competitive game. I don't want a game that requires a ton of dexterity or skill. I don't want a game that's going to lead to an excess of frustration. I want to be able to settle in, like with a good book, and relax. And The Legend of Zelda, or Breath of the Wild specifically, is like a great blend of serene exploration. But if you feel like you want to, you can pursue some great adventure gameplay and tack some quests. But the pacing and just the tone of the game, I think, is fun and lighthearted, but also tranquil enough, I think, for the mood you're in when you're sick. So that's why that was my selection this year.
Excellent. So, gentlemen, any thoughts on each other's selections? Any final words before we move on to the next category?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was gonna pick Black Ops 3 originally, but after playing that at one point when I was sick, I just felt even more exhausted afterwards. Just kind of like I basically said, it's just you exerting so much energy and stuff. So I changed my mind.
You guys, go ahead. Sorry, Zeus.
Well, and I find Swiss's choice interesting. I also considered Legend of Zelda because of its tranquility, but then I also considered that there are puzzles in that game And again, considering the sickness where like my head is stuffy and I'm really congested, I'm like, I'm not going to get through some of those puzzles because I just won't be able to think straight and see clearly.
That's fair.
Yeah.
For a similar reason, that's why I didn't go down the JRPG route, because if I'm groggy, I don't want to be reading tons of text. And I felt like that would probably put me to sleep.
Yeah, don't
But
play Xenoblade then.
it's probably a good thing, but
So as somebody who wasn't sick and fell asleep with Xenoblade, yeah, I could see where that happens.
Oh,
So anyhow, gentlemen, we are going to transition from being sick to just being sick of something. So here at E2KG, we have spent plenty of time railing on and discussing and debating and really calling into question a number of industry practices, a number of things that have occurred over the course of 2017. So we all have a little bit different of our choices here. And this category here for E2KG, we've got, this is in light of all the Star Wars hype that's coming this weekend, this is our Wretched Hive of Scum and Villainy Award, gentlemen. This is the game most emblematic of a sleazy business practice. So we're going to go in order of these games that they were released over the course of this year. So Augusticles, I'm going to have you start because you picked a game that was released back in the first quarter, back in March, and really it probably should have not been released in March and seen a few more patches before it came out. So what is your sleazy business practice of the year?
So this is a little, I don't want to say contrived, but I went through a couple logic hops to get to this one. And I felt everybody was, including myself originally when I first picked this selection, I felt everybody was going to go after Star Wars Battlefront 2. So I went with Mass Effect Andromeda. And the reason for that is we talked a little bit about some of the developer comments that came out afterwards, and Swiss and I riffed a little bit on how that was just a really big software development management bungle. And so the part I felt about it that was kind of sleazy from a consumer aspect is this is, from a BioWare perspective and from an EA perspective, right? This is one of your biggest franchises, right? And this carries over into the Star Wars Battlefront 2 stuff. You would think that a company would provide a great deal of care and feeding for that franchise. You take your veteran developers off of it, you sling it to a new development group, which has not been the primary lead studio on a game this big. You apparently don't put enough monitoring and controls on it. Like I don't understand why executive management or some type of like senior technical leadership didn't play the game themselves so that they understood what was getting released. But then after the fact, you hold that studio individually accountable for poor performance, right? Change out their leadership, right? And so it felt like, I often put things in this. One of the big things that I frequently say is you cannot give me vague, ambiguous guidance up front and then give me very specific negative feedback at the end. And so my feeling is they kind of flung it over their shoulder as if it wasn't something that was important at the outset, but then came back at the end and held everybody accountable for mucking up something that apparently was very, very, very important to them without showing the same attention along the way. And at the end of the day, really turned off all of the vast majority of fans of that franchise.
Yeah, I'll say as a fan of that franchise and as somebody who even ordered the prequel book because I was excited about that game. And I think the other piece here, and we talked about this a little bit over the course of the year, is some of the information that came out afterwards, after that studio had kind of been broken apart, that people had been shuttered off and moved on to other places, and some of the things that have come out, exactly what you're saying in terms of some of the mismanagement. So very good practice, not a very good practice, but a very good example of poor practice there. So I'm going to move over to you, Prime, because I think you have another poor practice that came out closer to this fall, which I think is another problematic and sleazy business practice as well.
Yes. So my choice is Destiny 2. So when they released the Curse of Osiris DLC, basically some of the and I believe this is something new that happened with Destiny. It locked activities out of the people who don't have the DLC. So, well, you know what? I seem to remember that's happened before, though. Now that I think about it, I believe in Destiny 1, they kind of did the same thing. So, Bungie, what's going on? Did you not learn from your well, you know what? I was going to say, did you not learn from your past mistakes? But the first time around, I guess it wasn't as big as a deal for some reason. But now, there's strikes that you can't get to. They raise the level cap for the DLC, but then the people who don't have the DLC, obviously, they're kind of they're stopped at, I don't know what the level cap is, maybe DB, normal level cap before.
Yeah, so it was at 305, 310, and they bumped it up to what, 340. But yeah, the prestige raid, some of the other kind of some of the higher end content was locked for those people that did not purchase the Curse of Osiris DLC.
Yes.
And again, this is where it just came out this yesterday, right? That now they're backpedaling, and they have issued a statement that they're going to provide an update that opens up those activities again to people.
Yeah, I did see that. So I mean, they are trying to fix it, I suppose. But Bungie, where were you before on Destiny 1? I needed your help then. I never bought any of the DLC, but that's all right. That's okay. It happens. Maybe, when it gets, 10, $15, I'll buy the game with all the DLC included.
So I'm going to take the Destiny segue and mine, loot boxes is a really low hanging fruit, and I think we have covered it enough here, but I'm going to say mine is communication, right? Not only with Bungie and the fact that they throttled the experience, but never really explained it to the player base, the fact that they never really acknowledged it for a few months as it was happening, until it got picked up by Kotaku and other bigger sites, and then now they're backpedaling on it, or they've changed the model of it. And I think the communication falls into DICE and EA and Disney, along with loot boxes and star cards. And it's not necessarily the loot box aspect that is the problem. It's the what star cards create, and the fact that none of that was, even when there was feedback, none of it was really clear leading up into release. And then the fact of communication on the night before release, as people are lining up at GameStops or other places to pick up their midnight or their 10 o'clock release, that EA pulls back and changes with there. So, and again, we have not had real clear communication on what's going to happen next. There's a lot of aspects there. So that's why I'm going with communication is my sleazy business practice, or the lack thereof from major publishers. So Swiss, we've talked about games that have come up. Your choice of sleazy business practices is a game that has not even come out yet, nor we have no idea when it may ever come out. So what is your choice?
My choice is Star Citizen. And the fact that it may never come out, as you said, is what makes it so sleazy. With this category, I think everybody's mind immediately jumped to Star Wars Battlefront 2. I didn't really pick that going in. We knew it was going to be a microtransaction factory from the get-go. I do think that they overreached and tried to push that envelope a little too far. But their strategy was nice. What I really dislike about Star Citizen, and I find disingenuous, is their fundraising. So they act as though, there's some scrappy startup with a dream and, just help us make this our dream a reality. But the real reality is they're a Leviathan with, $150 million in funds here, sitting on piles of cash. So I don't like that they're still selling these digital assets and putting these promises out. Oh yeah, we want to put this new feature in, but it's going to take time, and buy an 8 kilometer by 8 kilometer plot of land for $100 in the game, and it'll be yours. And it's just, it's not, people aren't investing in anything. It's digital. It's vapor, and I don't like that they're still fundraising as if they're in a Kickstarter campaign here. So that's
we
my
did it,
season
guys.
ticket.
We got through our rant list topic in time. This is excellent. So we have a little bit of time here. Does anybody have any responses or comments back to any one of our choices of sleazy business practices of 2017?
Yeah. So, we're not through yet. So I will try and make it as quick as possible. So I just want to make sure I understand. So nobody picked Star Wars Battlefront 2 in this category, right?
So I'll say that I picked it not because of loot boxes specifically.
Okay, gotcha. So one person did. So Swiss brings up an interesting point, and it's something I feel like we should explore next year. And Swiss, I actually wanted to talk to you about this, but I just haven't gotten around to it, particularly because you and I live on the other side of this line, right? And one of the questions I have is and I'm kind of not in line with the rest of the community on the Destiny 2 thing as far as the XP thing, because my perspective is it seems natural to me that I wouldn't get the same XP scaling for different types of activities. That makes sense to me. But the bigger question is kind of this topic of, I guess, maybe developer ethics. And it's this thing of how much do I have to reveal to my users about what's going on behind the curtain, right? Meaning software in general is this whole thing about we implement things and they appear and work a certain way, and part of what we inherently ask people to do is to not worry about what's going on behind the curtain. That's why you ask for it to be done in software, because you didn't want to be bothered with how it got built. And we have a lot of these particular canonical sayings like, you tell me what it is you want me to build, you don't tell me how to build it, right? I get to choose how I build it. So that's a topic in and of itself. But back to what Swiss brought up with Star Citizen, I'm starting to ask the question, so one thing I did is I looked at how many developers are there working on that game right now. Nobody knows for certain, but they think it's over 300. So it's 325 devs. You could take that and look at the 150 million and figure out kind of what that equates to in terms of salary. But one of my questions is Star Citizen is an isolated enclave of a community and a user base, right? So part of my thing is kind of, well, there's no secrets in that, right? Everybody knows what they're buying into and paying for, and the consumers have elected to be satisfied with that. And maybe in some ways it's kind of a gated community because you pay to get in. And maybe that's a question or a discussion we should have and a thing to consider in terms of if Star Wars Battlefront 2 had not appear to be a product for the general public, right? But maybe if it had kind of been sold kind of as a Morpig, with a $60 price tag plus a thing. So the whales, right? The people who enjoy the microtransactions and stuff, they could pay to live in that gated community, and it shouldn't bother anybody else. So I don't know. Those are just those things that I wanted to throw out on some of the picks that were made in the category.
Yeah, no, I think there's each of our picks probably could be and have been topics in themselves. So we should come back to the Star Citizen conversation. And I really think, Glassicles, your comment about developer ethics or how much behind the curtain is a really good conversation piece there, because it is about what they the growing expectation of the gaming communities and those hardcore fans that want more, and where before we probably would have just assumed that it was the game and kept playing. It's not that it exists, it's that how it's communicated. At least that was my choice there with Destiny.
And one last 10-second comment on the Destiny thing. We're castigating Bungie for that. We leave Sega and From Software alone about the Bloodborne stuff, and Bloodborne is the exact same thing, and it's worse. Like, you have to go and tunnel around the internet to find out that the XP or whatever that you use to buy an upgrade for a weapon doesn't actually derive the behavior that you would inherently expect it to. So there we go.
No, that's great. And actually, that's a perfect segue. Thank you. So that is the hidden mechanics of games. And so our next category is our hidden gem. So, right, these are games that maybe got overlooked during the course of the year. These are games that people may not expect to pick up, but these are games that we really enjoyed and deserve a little more praise than they got before. So, Agassicles, you're on a roll here. So let's talk about your hidden gem of 2017. And it's a game that you've been picking up kind of in bits and pieces over the past few months.
And that game is
it's Prey.
Yeah. So actually, it's kind of a weird how I made this pick, because Prey is actually, as it turns out, getting a lot of praise in mainstream gaming media tech outlets. It was Polygon's Game of the Year, I think. I want to say either Kotaku or somebody else made it their.
It was in Polygon's top 10. Yep.
Okay, and then one other site gave it some top award, like a category award. So I'm glad to see that. Up until those things were done, made, and announced, number one, I really tried to black out from all the other game awards that are going on now, because I didn't want my choices influenced by that subconsciously. But yeah, so I really think Prey is really a masterful piece of artwork, again, in the style of System Shock 2, which is kind of a seminal game in terms of game design and gaming history. And I was afraid that it dropped and too quickly passed out of the gaming voice track, right? That the media just didn't continue talking about it. And it's a single person encapsulated experience. There hasn't been any DLC for it, and so there's not a lot of heat about it on the heat map, and it's kind of passed out of the zeitgeist. But I think it's an important game for people to play, and that's not something that I typically say. Like I don't typically feel like there are games people must play, right, or gamers should be exposed to. But I will say if it's a title you slept on, I would strongly suggest taking a look at it, even if you just get it through GameFly and rent it or whatever. It's really turned out for me to be an enduring experience, as I tend to pick through those things pretty slowly.
Nice, that's good praise. So, and we're going to move from one Bethesda game to another here, Swiss. So your hidden gem this year is one that is also getting a lot of Game of the Year praise, but was buried in a big release day.
Right. That was what surprised me from Agassicles pick. I immediately thought Bethesda, and then I thought it's probably not good that we have two games from the same company as hidden gems that are overlooked. But my choice is Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, and mostly just because it was a fun experience. It's been a fun experience for me. I even played some last night, and it did get good reviews. I think it's like an 88 or an 89 on Metacritic. People liked it, just as DB alluded to. It went up against Assassin's Creed Origins and Mario Odyssey on October 27th. And sales have reportedly not been good, and they slashed the price heading into Black Friday and the holiday season, which I don't take as a particularly strong sign. But, I just figure if in the churn, my thought process for making this selection is I enjoy the game. It's a fun game, got good reviews. And in the churn of the holiday season, opening up, as we enter November, if it just got, lost in the shuffle, it's probably worth it to come back to it in 2018. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, fortunately for you, I guess, it would be a fairly cheap pickup. So Wolfenstein 2.
Yeah, I've been tempted by Wolfenstein 2 multiple times, as you guys know, because I continue to ask about it in the chat. But the fact that for $40 you can get the game and the season pass, which will come with 3 additional DLC story missions of other characters besides BJ. And, to me, the Wolfenstein world is the most interesting part, right? That alternative history is a really interesting story and narrative. So in both of those games, both narratively in Prey and in Wolfenstein, that they are great, strong, single-player, narrative-driven action games. So my piece here is not a strong narrative game, and it's one that it could have been chosen for a family game night, although it often ends up in yelling. And that is Snipper Clips. So that is a launch downloadable game on the Switch, which is now actually getting a boxed release in December here. So it may get a second life, but it was a great creative little puzzle game, and the box release adds even more content into it. So it's a game that we've enjoyed playing cooperatively, and it's created a little bit of competition as well. So, but it's not a big name or big characters on the Nintendo Switch, and it may get overlooked. So that's my choice here. But Prime, let's follow up and finish out this category in what's your hidden gem for the year?
All right, so this game was pretty well received. Excuse me, in the media at least. They gave it pretty good reviews. It's Golf Story for the Switch. Saw a lot of praise from the different websites. I got fairly good reviews. Excuse me. I was trying to look for it on Metacritic just now, but I couldn't find it. But I didn't see a lot of too much chatter on just from gamers themselves, just on different forums and stuff like that. A little bit here and there, but I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was a fun little game. Not my fun game for tonight though. A mix of RPG and an actual golf game. You can just if you want, you can just tee off anytime you want in the game. So that's kind of cool. There's little hidden things too that you can do, which kind of a mechanic that I'm assuming that they put that in. Break these little clay pots that are in like a little pond or something, and you get money from that. And you can obviously you can use that money to buy things. So that was my pick, Golf Story.
All right. So, gentlemen, any follow up to these hidden gems? Some big name titles that might have got overshadowed, and some smaller titles here.
Well, I figured I kind of knew that Prime was going to put Golf Story either here or as the game he wanted to play the most when he was sick. But I had a feeling it was coming.
It was always going to be there.
Nice. And so finally, our final topic, our final category for this show is the game that we had the most fun with. So some games like our hidden gem, obviously they didn't get the attention they deserve. Some games got a lot of attention this year, but what we wanted to focus in on is what game did we give the most attention to? What game did we as gamers, because that's what we are at our core, what was our most enjoyable gaming experience? What game was our most fun this year? So in that way, this is the life of the party. This is our most fun game. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Agassicles, because you've got one that is unique here, but we've also talked about it before, which is Mario Kart 8. So what was your criteria? How did you decide that this is your most fun game of the year?
So this is a tough one, and it probably didn't come off exactly as I thought it would. It's the way we have it titled. It's slashed between the two topics. We have Life of the Party / most fun game, and so the first cut I looked at it, for whatever reason, I focused on the most fun game, and I think I had Destiny 2. And this was the category that, for us, I felt equated to our game of the year, if you have to have a parallel to that. When I came back the second time, and DB, I think it's how we had it written in different places. Maybe one side was capitalized or the other. But the second time
I think we can count it as it's our most enjoyable game experience, right? It's our most enjoyable, most fun that we've had. So, if that to you is Destiny, that's great.
Well, what I wound up answering with is I focused on the Life of the Party title the second time, right? Because we did a do-over on our lists. And when I thought Life of the Party, I was thinking this is the game that, to me, it's fun, but it's also the game that you play and maybe somebody else watches you play it, or maybe it's a game played in a dorm or something like that. So I skewed it a little differently. I don't think people want to sit and stand over my shoulder and watch me play Destiny. But I think a bunch of people might stand around in front of a big screen TV and watch a bunch of different people playing Mario Kart, even though they may not be the ones to have controllers in their hand. It's fun, it's simple, and so Life of the Party to me was slightly different than Family Night game. It's fun, it's simple, it's got a ton of content. You can spool tons of different scenarios very quickly. You can sit in an hour block of time and be thrown a bunch of different things, kind of an unending cornucopia of content, if you will. Yes, you're doing the same basic thing, but it highly varies itself in a way that's a little different than even Destiny, I would say. And it's a game on the Switch, which means you can play it at home or you can play it with you. You can play it with you on the go. So it is what I settled down with as the life of the party game.
Yeah, I think that's using that logic, it makes a whole lot of sense. So let me ask you though, if you're thinking about it in terms of yourself, right? It's late at night, the party's all done, you're by yourself, you're looking for a game that you know you're going to have fun with, you had a hard day, something, right? So is it Mario Kart? Is it Destiny? What's your, if you're thinking about it as an individual, where's that most fun?
Yeah, if I do most fun, I have to say Destiny 2. And I don't know if I would intuitively or inherently say Destiny 2, but about 4 weeks ago when we were considering all these things, what I told myself is dude, at some point you have to acknowledge the sheer number of hours that you spend in Destiny 2 and say that mathematically that indicates something, right? You can't just let that math go. So yeah, I'd probably say Destiny 2 for this one.
Yeah, nice. Good. So we've got the idea here of whether it's the life of the party or it's the game that we as individuals have had the most fun with. But Swiss, I think your choice could actually fit both of those criteria, right? That it could be something that people enjoy watching, but it could also be something that just brings you joy as well.
Right. I chose Mario Odyssey. And as DB once again alluded to, because he's a sharp guy, I took the two aspects of the this category, life of the party and most fun game. And to me, that meant what game most exudes like happiness and joy. And that's how I looked at it. I didn't look at most fun being the game that I would just, if I had one game on a desert island, want to play. Although, Mario would be a strong contender for that. I looked at the game that was just, this is just a fun, enjoyable, happy-go-lucky experience. And, even back at E3, when they started the reveal trailer and they started playing the song, it's Jump Up Superstar or whatever it's called, and you have the jazzy beat and everything. It's a happy game. It's a fun game. So, tip the hat to Nintendo. And after a strong year, this is an excellent way to finish strong. And I can't think of a better choice to exemplify just joy than a Mario game, than this particular Mario game.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I am right there with you. That I thought about this as what category, what game made me smile, right? What game made me really just enjoy playing it? What game did I have the most fun with? And for me, that was Mario Odyssey, right? I know that it was not the most important game of the year, nor that it's the most revolutionary, right? But it to me was the most fun. It is an evolution of all things that have been building on over since Mario 64. And it's a game that I can consistently pick up and play for long stretches or for short little spots and grab a moon here and there. But I think it also is a personal choice because it makes me think about my childhood a little bit more in terms of it just brings me back to feeling comfy as a kid and enjoying some Mario. So I'm right there with you, Swiss, as Mario Odyssey as my most fun game of the year. So Prime, you are going to finish out this category for us. So what is your life of the party most fun game of 2017?
So excuse me, I was concentrating more on the most fun part, and I'm gonna make it a clean sweep for at least Mario games. So I'm gonna say Mario Odyssey 2. I picked on this one also. Once again, it's I'm going through the world. I get a moon here and there, and then I see one like way across the other side of the map. Like, I wonder how you get that. So I gotta kind of figure it out and just kind of have fun trying to figure out how to get these different moons. Just almost that Crackdown kind of feel where you see the orb and Crackdown, you want to get them and get them. These are not as obvious sometimes, so it makes it a little bit more trickier. But it's fun in it's just a fun process. How different ways that you can get these moons. Sometimes it's super easy. You just walk up to it and get it. Other times, you might see Toad. What's his name in his game? Captain Toad, kind of sitting there on a ledge somewhere. You have to kind of move the camera around to see him like off the map, and you kind of see him on the edge of a cliff or something like that. So it's just a fun game.
All right. So any final thoughts? Any comments? Glassicles, you are the only one here that, your head moved as we got a little bit of a sweep here, or at least for Morio. So any final thoughts, Swiss, Prime, any other things before we wrap up and head into the end of our show here?
Nope, we're good to go.
No feedback, no. So I will say that I think that this process, gentlemen, has been fun. It's been interesting to kind of hear our own perspectives and to take a little bit of interpretation with it, right? The fact that we may not come at things the same way in terms of understanding a category also makes for a nice diversity of games to get highlighted here. So this is our first of 2 Game of the Year 2007 wrap-up game podcast. We will be back with our final 5 categories, and these include game most likely to be Game of the Year in major media outlets or major gaming outlets, game most likely to be mentioned in pop culture or known to the wider audience, most disappointing game experience, a game we regret not trying, not playing, or getting rid of too soon this year. And finally, our game that we think will still be playing in 2018. So those are our next 5 categories as we review our games of 2017. And I hope you'll stick around or come back to join us then. So for myself, DBQ Hams, Osiris Prime, Agasicles Stamos, and Swiss Guard, thank you all, gentlemen, for being here. And until next time, we will always be enough to keep you going.